There's a kind of beauty that doesn't shout. It doesn't sparkle in the light or demand to be seen. It lives quietly, in the corners of silence, in the spaces between sighs, in the eyes of someone who feels too deeply and speaks too little. This the hidden beauty of a melancholic personality no one talks about, a beauty that almost no one notices, yet it shapes the world in invisible ways. There's a boy sitting by the window of a half-empty cafe. Rain trails down the glass, blurring the city lights into soft streaks of color. He isn't scrolling through his phone, nor pretending to look busy. He's just there, watching, thinking, feeling. He remembers something, not clearly, but enough to stir something deep inside him. A memory of a friend he's lost touch with. A moment he could have said something, but didn't. The ache of time passing faster than he can hold on to it. To most people, he looks lonely. To him, this quiet sadness feels oddly familiar, like an old song that once broke his heart but still comforts him when played again. That's the thing about melancholic souls. They live where beauty and sorrow meet, in that fragile place where the world feels both too much and not enough. We often misunderstand melancholic personalities. We label them as too emotional, too serious, too quiet. But rarely do we see the depth behind their silence. The melancholic mind is like an ocean, calm on the surface, but full of unseen currents beneath. They think not just to understand, but to feel meaning. They don't rush through emotions. They explore them, piece by piece, layer by layer. While others might escape pain, melancholics study it. They want to know why it hurts, what it teaches, and how it can transform them. That's why they often appear introspective, lost in thought, but actually they're searching for truth in every feeling. There's a quiet intelligence in them, not the kind that dazzles a room, but the kind that listens deeply and notices everything. They remember small details others forget, the hesitation in someone's voice, the sadness hidden behind a smile, the way the light hits a wall at 5 p.m. They're not trying to be poetic, they just are. Because to them, every moment carries meaning. And that's their gift and their curse. Think about it. When was the last time you really felt something? Not the rush of pleasure or excitement, but the stillness of quiet emotion. That ache of nostalgia when an old song plays, or the lump in your throat when you see an old photograph. That's the melancholic part of you speaking. It's the voice that reminds you that life is fragile, that love is fleeting, that beauty often hides in loss. Melancholics don't fear sadness, they understand it. They know it's not the opposite of joy, but the shadow that makes joy visible. Because without sorrow, how would we ever recognize the light? This is why melancholics often become artists, writers, thinkers, people who translate emotion into meaning. They don't just see the world as it is, they see the soul of it. They find beauty in imperfection, purpose in pain, and peace in acceptance. And yet, the world rarely rewards this kind of depth. We celebrate the bold, the loud, the relentlessly optimistic. We tell people to stay positive, to move on, to cheer up. But what if feeling deeply isn't a weakness? What if it's a kind of wisdom? What if the melancholic heart, the one that breaks easily, is also the one that understands love the most? The melancholic personality is often slow to trust, but once they do, their loyalty runs deeper than most will ever know. They don't love halfway. When they care, it's not because of what you give them, but because of who you are. They see the invisible parts of people, the fears, the flaws, the unspoken dreams. That's why they make such empathetic friends, patient lovers, and thoughtful creators. They feel with you, not just for you. They can sense when your voice softens because you're holding back tears, or when your laughter sounds forced because your heart is tired. They live in emotional honesty. And though this often makes them feel misunderstood, it also gives them a kind of strength most people overlook: emotional endurance. Melancholics can sit with pain without turning away. They don't need constant distraction or external validation. They can be alone, not because they don't need people, but because they've learned how to find peace in solitude. In a world that glorifies constant motion, they remind us of the power of stillness. In a culture obsessed with happiness, they remind us of the sacredness of sadness. If you've ever loved a melancholic, you know it's not always easy. They'll listen more than they speak. They'll take time to open up. And when they do, their love won't come in grand gestures. It'll come in subtle ways. Remembering your favorite tea, noticing when you're quiet, sending a message just to say, "I was thinking about you." They crave depth, not drama, connection, not attention. They'd rather sit in silence with someone who understands them than fill a room with meaningless noise. But they also struggle. They overthink. They replay conversations in their minds, wondering if they said the wrong thing or missed a hidden meaning. They hold on to moments long after others have forgotten. And yet, in that overthinking lies their tenderness. Because at the heart of every melancholic thought is care. They worry because they love. They analyze because they want to understand. They remember because they don't want to lose what truly matters. Many of history's greatest minds carried the melancholic temperament, from artists like Van Gogh to thinkers like Kierkegaard. Their sadness wasn't a flaw. It was the lens through which they saw truth. Pain for them wasn't the enemy, it was the teacher. That's what the melancholic teaches us, that beauty often wears the mask of sorrow, that you can be gentle and strong at the same time, that there's courage in vulnerability and wisdom in tears. When a melancholic paints, writes, or sings, they don't just express emotion, they translate it. They turn their inner storms into art, into empathy, into connection, and in doing so they remind us that feeling deeply is not something to hide, but something to honor. Maybe you've been told you're too sensitive, that you take things too personally, that you think too much. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's your way of understanding life. Maybe you were never meant to rush through feelings like traffic lights. Maybe you were meant to sit in them until you understand their color. We all have a bit of the melancholic inside us, that quiet part that stares out the window when it rains, that rereads old messages, that wonders what could have been. It's the part that connects us to our humanity, because beneath all our differences, we all long for meaning, we all crave connection, and we all carry a quiet sadness, a reminder that we once loved, once cared, once lived deeply enough to hurt. That's not weakness. That's proof of being alive. The hidden beauty of a melancholic soul is not in their sadness, but in their sensitivity, in their ability to see the poetry of a moment others overlook, in the way they can hold pain and peace in the same hand. They remind us that not everything broken needs to be fixed. Some things are meant to be felt, and that sometimes the deepest form of strength is to sit quietly with your own heart and simply listen, because the melancholic doesn't just live life, they feel it in every trembling, beautiful, fleeting breath. If this spoke to something inside you, that quiet part you rarely show the world, Step through the gateway. Subscribe. Share this with someone who feels too deeply to explain why. Maybe they need to remember that their heart isn't too much. It's just beautifully melancholic.